I'm gonna forego the microphone, if that's okay. Can all of you hear me? Great. That was bad. They can hear me. It's easier to present with my hands. Oh, yeah, all right.
Have a mic.
So I'm going to be talking about campaigns and advocacy. Let's do next slide. So a bit about me. I've been a part of a lot of campaigns. Like I said, my first campaign was President Obama's campaign in 2012. I think we got it. Well, you try unplugging it. Okay. So I worked for Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016, Vincent Ford's campaign for Atlanta mayor in 2017, Gwen Graham's campaign for Florida governor in 2018, and most recently I was deputy campaign manager for Zara Karinchak's run for Georgia Senate, where we flipped a seat that had been Republican for over 15 years, one of the most diverse districts in Georgia. I'm really proud of that work. Fun fact about me, I ran into Natalie Portman once at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. So, you know, if you guys have any like celebrity sightings, let me know. I'd love to talk about it. Cool. So I'm gonna show you guys two TV ads. I want you guys to tell me which one is more memorable to you. So next slide. Let's play this first one. Yeah. Yep.
He was born in an Army hospital in Colorado. His father was an Army Air Corps pilot. His mother, a community leader. He went to college at Yale and volunteered to serve in Vietnam.
The decisions that he made saved our lives. When he pulled me out of the river, he risked his life to save mine.
In combat, he earned the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts. Then he came home determined to end that war. For more than 30 years, John Kerry has served America. As a tough prosecutor, he fought for victims' rights. In the Senate, he was a leader in the fight for health care for children. He joined with John McCain to find the truth about POWs and MIAs in Vietnam. He broke with his own party to support a balanced budget. Then in the 1990s, cast a decisive vote that created 20 million new jobs, a lifetime of service and strength. John Kerry for president.
I'm John Kerry, and I approve this message.
All right. Let's do the next.
He was born in an Army.
Whoops, yes, he was born.
I'm Jason Kander. Senator Blunt has been attacking me on guns. Well, in the Army, I learned how to use and respect my rifle. In Afghanistan, I volunteered to be an extra gun in a convoy of unarmored SUVs. And in the state legislature, I supported Second Amendment rights. I also believe in background checks, so that terrorists can't get their hands on one of these. I approve this message because I'd like to see Senator Blunt do this.
All right. So, which ad? So has the first ad. More effective, more memorable. Second ad. So everyone. Okay. So next slide. Actually, hold on. Why do you think this second ad was more effective? It's half the length. Why does this one stand out to you? Yeah.
I mean, it's got like a gun there.
Shock value.
Strong visual imagery, right? Right here. Exactly, right? Something totally crazy, like we don't see it usually. Yeah.
I remember he was a Democrat running against the NRA or something.
Exactly. He was running in Missouri. He ended up losing his race for the conservative state, and he was definitely running an uphill battle, right? Next slide. So why did Kander's ad work? And it's ultimately about telling a story. You know, both these ads for Kerry and Kander are trying to showcase their military credentials, right? That both of them are veterans, they served overseas, but John Kerry's might be longer, but it doesn't tell a story. It reads like a resume, right? This is where I served, these are the medals I won, this is where I went to school. You know, frankly, most American voters are turned off by you bragging about your academic credentials. And so it doesn't tell you, it just tells you where he's been, it doesn't tell you where he is and where he's going. Kander's ad tells a story, right? There's the past, this is where I served, this is where I learned to use and respect my rifle, but also where he's going, right? Like, this is how my personal history, my story has informed my gun policy. So that's what campaigns are about, telling a narrative and, next slide, and being able to tell a story. So a campaign is, depending on how big or small it is, it's can be a complex or simple organism. You usually have a campaign manager, and then you have a few departments, right? The field department, finance department, communications department, and the political department. And all of these different parts of the campaign work together in conjunction to tell a story. And throughout this presentation, we'll do a bit of an overview of each of them, so you can learn a bit about what they do. And for high schoolers and for college students, there are internships in all of these fields at the DNC, at like the state level. So hopefully you get a sense of maybe what you might or might not be interested in. So field organizing. This is typically what we would think of as most like as the skeleton of a campaign. This is if you have no money, you have nothing. You knock on doors, you try to organize, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, post on Facebook, right? So next slide. So what is field organizing? It's phone banking, right? Cold calling people, voters. They're going door to door, which is canvassing, and registering voters. And does it increase turnout by your supporters? And I want to emphasize this because you always want to target the people you're talking to. Say you're running for Cupertino City Council. There's 50,000 people who live in Cupertino, maybe about 30,000 are registered to vote. You're not going to be able to talk to all of those people. You're just not. And it's not a good use of your time to spend all your time talking to people who, one, are probably not going to vote, or two, cannot be convinced. So you gotta know your audience, right? If you're, say, a centrist, you should not waste your time talking to people who are very Republican, very Democrat. If you're very liberal, talk to people who you can get to turn out, but can support you, right? Don't waste your time talking to people on the far right. Like, that's not good use of your time. If you're a Chinese American candidate who thinks that you have a strong appeal to Chinese speaking, go to people whose homes you know are Chinese speaking. Right? Show up at Chinese events geared towards Chinese Americans, right? So it doesn't increase turnout by your supporters. Phone banking increased turnout by about 2 to 3%. Canvassing, about 4 to 5%. And I want to make this known to some of our local candidates or elected officials in here. Yard signs have no statistical evidence to back up that they work. There might be some tiniest marginal effect on persuading supporters, but I see you guys spending hundreds of dollars on buying these signs, spending a lot of time sticking them in the ground. They do not turn out your supporters. They do not. So your time is better spent knocking on doors, talking to people on the phone, showing up to events, than on planting yard signs. Next slide. So I want to talk about using a personal story, because this is the most important skill of grassroots organizing, because it's ultimately about connecting with people, and it's not just something you can use if you're working on campaigns. It's going to be useful in whatever line of work you choose to pursue, whether it's consulting, whether it's law. So let's talk a bit about that. So why is your personal story important? It allows you to connect with someone human to human. Frankly, people don't care so much about policy, right? When they're talking to you, they want to know why you're there. They want to know you as a person, not as a candidate, because campaigns are not about politics. They're not even about policy. They're about people. So you've got to be able to communicate kind of your humanness to the people you meet, right? We hear this all the time, Obama seemed like someone you could grab a beer with, Hillary Clinton did not, right? So you want to be able to kind of have that factor, whether you're a volunteer or a candidate, to be able to seem like a personable candidate. And that comes in handy if asking voters for support, asking donors for money, asking volunteers for time. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my personal story. This is what I would use when I go to the door or call whatever voter for whatever campaign. So they might ask, okay, Felix, why are you here? And I'll say, well, man, today I'm at your door because I am passionate about healthcare. When I was 14, I was volunteering around my community back in the Bay Area, to raise awareness about Obamacare. And this one morning I was supposed to do this forum on Obamacare in my local park in Sunnyvale. And that morning I had a seizure. And I was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with epilepsy. And that day, with a renewed understanding of the urgency of the healthcare insurance crisis, I went back to the park and I talked to people about making sure they were covered, making sure that they, in the case of a medical emergency, were financially okay. And that's what keeps me passionate. That's why I'm here today. And so, you know, that's the type of story that is deeply personal, and it's not necessarily political, right? That makes people feel like, okay, you're coming from a genuine, sincere place. So now it's your turn. I want you to share your personal story with the person next to you. Now, it doesn't have to be, you know, I don't expect you all to have some medical condition or something, but all of you have a reason why you're here today, right? You care about a certain issue, maybe you're just broadly interested in politics, but why? Maybe you care about immigration, maybe you care about the economy, why, right? So keep it short, keep it sweet, and definitely make it personal. So I'll give you guys like 3 minutes to talk to your partners, and you can give each other suggestions and refine it, and then we'll hear some of these afterwards.
Have you ever played Odyssey or? Let me think of my story. Probably the better reason why
And you're not ever in the public, so I don't necessarily have that story let out.
Freshman year, I took a government class and I learned about how so it take up about 10% of the population and about 40% or maybe 50% of the government. It's hard that percentage is really low and about the government is so like actually lives
the more I learned about history,
I guess I'm also kind of like, for me it's like, I really
remember when I knew about
so I spent a lot of time working for schools, like I thought there were a lot of people certain things, but I also like, it wasn't really time to go, a lot of times just like,
over time I started to
just like, I feel like these issues, all the questions
that are being debated in government aren't just issues
like things that like we like generally our friends like literature, right?
real
Like
policy
a
issues.
lot of that is reflected in how we decide for example, a lot of these like more the same, whereas like more people who struggle with the same yeah.
I never really had one thing I always. It was like when I was younger, it was like always this. It was like I was always this. I think that's how it goes. What's your story?
Yeah, I just like it.
All right. Shall I reconvene? So, did anyone hear any outstanding personal stories they'd like to share? Yeah.
So Nelson's personal story was very compelling because he talked about how his grandmother wasn't able to, like, because of the bad policies in China at the time, they weren't able to get like food vouchers to feed their family. So his dad had to like catch snakes and then sell the skin of the snakes to get enough money to feed their family. So like that's a clear example of how like the policies at the time were serving their family, and they had to go to extreme measures because of it.
Definitely. And I think that's something plenty of us can kind of understand, right? Like many of us come from immigrant families, or we believe in immigrants ourselves. And you know, we have long family histories of pretty wild stories. Thanks, Nelson. Anyone else? I heard some that were just like, my mom made me come here. So like, needless to say, that's not a very compelling reason to vote for you. Alright, next slide. Oh, wow, alright. So, we did this exact same exercise on my first day on the Hillary Clinton campaign. And because I did exactly what Nelson did and shared my story with the room, a few weeks later they asked me to open for Hillary Clinton when she came to Des Moines. So, using your personal story can take you a long way. You never know when whoever you're meeting, that personal story is going to stick in their head, and they'll be able to lend you a helping hand later on. So, like I said, it's not just a valuable skill in politics or in organizing, but really in your professional life. Let's talk about fundraising. So, every campaign needs money, you know, more so now than 10 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 100 years ago. So, for a local race, you're probably talking about $10,000. Really depending on how hard you're willing to work. If you're willing to spend all day knocking on doors, then maybe you don't need that much. At the state level, you're looking at 200 grand, sorry, there's missing a zero. But really, I would say that you're looking maybe $500,000 if you want to challenge some of the folks in the Bay Area. And then in Congress, that's about $500,000. But in the Bay Area, probably translates to about $2 million. And the 2016 Clinton presidential campaign spent almost $564 million. And if you include independent expenditures, and that's to say, like, if me and you were to decide we really like Hillary Clinton, let's hit up our family and friends for money and independently run ads for her, that number goes up to over $700 million. So we're talking about a very expensive endeavor here. So how do we raise that money? So how do campaigns raise money? They ask people for it. And one of the things I want you all to take away from this brief lecture is to not be afraid of asking people for things. That's what campaigns are about. You're asking people for their vote, for their support, for their money. Right? You gotta step out of your comfort zone. That's what organizing is. But for a lot of campaigns and fundraiser events, we've all had like selling, like sold boba like at school or something, right? Fundraiser events are one way to raise money. PACs are one way to raise money. So, you know, Planned Parenthood has a PAC, Google has a PAC. So various just organizations or companies that might have some kind of interest in your race might be able to give you money. Online, right, we've seen with Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, now that through social media they're able to raise tremendous amounts of money just off small dollar donations. And also emails. You know, in 2012, just one name on Obama's email list was worth $1.25. That's how much it was worth to buy that list off if you were someone else running for Congress or something. So emails are one way that's a tried and proven way of getting folks to reaching out to your supporters and asking them for money. But finally, and this may be a little known fact about campaigning these days, but maybe about 60-70% of money raised on campaigns is during what we call call time. And that's when you sit down, you have a list of people who have, you know, big bank accounts and can give you money, and you call through them. And I don't think this is the right way to do it. That's not the way it should be. But most members of Congress probably every week spend about 3-4 hours in a windowless room calling donors, asking them for money. It's not a glamorous process. It definitely needs to change. But right now, this is how campaigns finance themselves. Let's talk comms. So comms is how you interact with the press, and there's two ways of doing that. There's paid media, which means you're investing money into getting your face in front of people. So that's TV and radio, that's paying for ads on social media, and also direct mail, which is just mailing folks flyers. And there's earned media, which is something that the more media you earn, less media to pay for, we'll put it that way. You know, that's mentions in the news, social media posts, word of mouth. These are ways of reaching voters that you don't have to pay for. And Donald Trump is great at this, right? He gets lots of free news coverage, and that's partially why he could afford to spend a lot less than Hillary Clinton did in 2016, because he was on TV more than she was, even though he wasn't spending money on it. And he's on Twitter, right? He tweets directly to his however millions, probably like, what, maybe 5-6 million Twitter followers. And you know no one is like, you know, he doesn't hire anyone to vet those or anything like that. And word of mouth as well, right? Like people are always talking about Donald Trump. You know, if you get in an Uber or something, he might just come up with a conversation. You're probably not going to talk about Hillary Clinton, right? So that's, earned media is one of the things that can really power a campaign and also lower the costs of running your race. Let's talk about direct mail, which is probably the most affordable way for campaigns to reach out to people. If if you're a local candidate, you can't afford to be on TV, especially here in the Bay. You know, TV ads here, if you want to buy airtime for San Jose, you got to buy it for San Francisco and Oakland too. So you wanna use mail to get to people. And also it takes less time than the knocking at the door, of course. So one mistake I often see with mail around these parts that comes to our home is that it's way too lengthy, right? Like I see some like city council members or whoever writing like 4 or 5 paragraphs on their detailed plan for the library or something. And frankly, no one's gonna read that. You have 30 seconds to get your message across. The 30 seconds it takes me to get to my mailbox, sift through my mail, and then I get in the house and I toss it in the trash. You have that amount of time to get your message across. So what do you want people to know in that brief amount of time? You want people to know your name, when to vote, and where to vote. That's the key. Those are the key points. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did an amazing job of this. You know, her flyers, her graphic design was so good. You know, it shows her name. Notice that she's looking at this text over here, vote on Tuesday, June 26th. If you know nothing else, you know at least that, right? And if you're interested in her candidacy, you might read the small text that she's a Democrat for Congress, that it doesn't take money from PACs or corporations. But for the vast majority of voters, they're not going to look at that fine print. So you want to get the general gist of your campaign on the radar. All right, so going negative, not yet, hold on. So going negative, you still got to tell a story, right? I want to talk a bit about this because I think it's maybe more relevant now than ever before in recent history. You still got to tell a story, right? I think there's this temptation to say, let's say you're running a negative ad against Donald Trump, to say, Donald Trump said this, Donald Trump said that, because he says a lot of outrageous things. But frankly, that doesn't resonate with people. And there might even be people who behind closed doors are okay with the type of rhetoric that he's espousing. So you want to put it in context. Put it in a narrative that regular people can understand. And you also want to stay honest. Going negative, you don't want to falsify any information, or it's just not going to look good for you, and word's going to get around. Voters can smell BS. And it can also backfire on your campaign. Studies have shown that when you go negative, it does sink the numbers of your opponent, but it also sinks your numbers too. So if you're running in a field of like 4 or 5 people, and you're in the middle of the pack, maybe not the wisest thing to do. So I want to show an example of this ad from 2016 that I think did a great job of telling a story through negative advertising. Let's go back. Yeah, and then.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. She's a slob. She ate like a pig.
A person who's flat-chested is very hard to be attacked. Does she have a good body? No. Does she have a fat? Absolutely. Do you treat women with respect?
I can't say that either.
All right.
So that's an instance of an ad that takes Donald Trump's words, that makes you look at it through the lens of these young girls, right? And it makes you think, okay, as a brother, as a father, like, how do I respond to it makes me interrogate kind of my conscience, right? And it's because it tells a narrative. And this ad was played in every swing state in 2016, and it got like 6 million views on YouTube. So I think that's part of the success of telling a story while going negative. So finally, I want to get into kind of the political department, what they do. Next slide. So there's all kinds of groups that exist in our political system, right? YAPA, APAPA is just one of them, right? You got like the NRA, you got the NAACP, you got the ACLU, Sierra Club. These groups all have different interests, and a successful campaign is gonna tap into the power of these groups. because these groups can offer you endorsements and offer you volunteers, and they can offer you money, right? So you want to know your values and seek out support. You also want to know your values and avoid groups that you don't want to associate, right? So you just got to be mindful of that. And finally, I think there's a golden rule in politics: be nice to everyone you meet, because you don't know when you're going to cross paths with them again. This is a field where people could be a nobody one day and the next day they're somebody, right? I've worked on maybe 9 or 10 campaigns at this point, and I know folks who have worked on 9 or 10 campaigns as well, and I never know if I'll run into them on another race down the road. So it's always good to just be nice to people and maintain those relationships, because you never know when they can be of help. So finally, in conclusion, use your personal story in all facets of advocacy. If you don't ask, you don't get. You don't ask for money, you don't ask for votes, you don't ask for volunteers, people aren't going to give. I find that I would encourage all of you to at least think about running for office. We need more Asian American voices, we need more women in places of leadership. And even if you're not going to run for office, definitely think about getting involved. Questions? Yeah.
I guess it's a two-part question. So I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on what you were thinking right after the 2016 election, when the news broke.
Yeah.
Also, what Donald Trump did that was so effective. Did he follow this way, or was the unconventional path more successful for his?
Sure. Well, so the first part of the question, it was pretty tough after November 2016, right? I remember that night, people were really upset. There was a lot of drinking going on. And it's a depressing couple of days, because the next morning you still got to show up, clean out the office. Your volunteers who really put their lives on hold to knock on doors and stuff, you got to call them up and say, hey, how are you doing? I'm not doing so hot myself, right? It's not great. But winning and losing, that's a part of campaigns, and you just have to learn to deal with it. Although I think 2016 was definitely a little different from most races. The second part of your question, sorry, remind me.
Was Donald Trump conventional?
Oh, yeah. So I don't really know why Donald Trump was successful, right? If I knew that for a fact, I'd be the most valuable political consultant on the scene. But there's definitely some truth to the fact that there are white workers who are really struggling in the Northeast, and they're seeing that maybe an industrial job they had for generations, those are disappearing. And so there was a lot of resentment, right? Resentment towards immigrants, towards automation, and they felt like the Democratic Party was talking about who could use the bathroom, we're talking about racial issues, and we're really addressing those economic issues that were near and dear to them, right? And in fact, we were saying that they aren't politically correct, that they weren't respectful. At one point, Hillary Clinton even had that little segment where she called certain Trump supporters deplorable, right? That's not a message that resonates. That's not a message that tells people I'm listening to your concerns. So I think that was definitely part of it. But like I said, no one really knows for sure. I guess we'll find out next year. Any other questions?
Do you mind if I answer your question? I think as a Democrat that night, when the polls were coming in from Florida, Michigan, it was looking for a bad night for Californians, and we thought we were in a dream. It's supposed to be our night, California, we did very good, but as it rolled on, we thought, maybe Hillary will win. And then when it sunk on that Trump won, we felt like we were in a dream, Why Trump did so well, what my friends were telling me, that he did very well on social media. I think that he invested a lot in Facebook, he invested a lot in other stuff, and I think, again, what Felix said, white America was just really, they just want to have a life. They just want to have a good value, have good things that we have in California, and Trump was offering him something different, and I think that's why Trump got elected.
And also from a psychological perspective, what I was talking about earlier, that Trump's message was a lot simpler. Hillary Clinton had multiple different policy proposals that were all very nuanced and had a lot of complexity in them, and then Trump sort of just had like very simple sound bites that were easy to understand, like build a wall, like something that like, yeah, like lock her up, things that are very simple English that a lot of people can understand. It makes it seem more believable, as
Yeah,
I was talking
definitely.
about earlier.
How do you think Russian meddling might play into
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, when James Comey came out with that bombshell in October that he thought there were more emails out there, that definitely didn't do the radio papers either, so just a confluence of factors. Yeah.
So like when Hillary said like Trump supporters are deplorable, and like when a politician says something that can be like taken in a really negative way, because I know when Hillary said that, that